call 0345 6060 973.
9 minutes before 8 is the time, and as I've told you already, at around 9 o'clock this morning, this all-important United Nations report will be revealed or released, and it's going to say, it is already reported, that the Earth is likely to warm by about 1.5 degrees centigrade 10 years earlier than thought. So we need to be doing as many things as we can for the environment, and on that theme, let's bring into the conversation Business Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng, who'll talk about investment by the British government and private sector in the generation of wind turbines. Good morning, Secretary of State. What is this investment? Where's it going?
Hello, Nick. It's going in the Humber region. I'm going to be going up there this morning, and it's two companies, Siemens Gamesa and also GRI Renewables, and the investment will mean that there will be something like 1,340 new jobs, people making things like offshore wind turbines and other things, as you know, that will help the fight against climate change and drive what we call the green industrial revolution.
Wind farms. 7 years ago, Boris Johnson, as Mayor of London, told me wind farms failed to pull the skin off a rice pudding. Why are we now spending 260 million quid?
Well, they are doing significantly more than that, Nick,
so the Prime Minister was wrong when he told me that?
When he said that 9 years ago, clearly what he said was wrong. I mean, wind power contributes sometimes
so why
up
the
to 40%
conversion by the Prime
of electricity.
Minister, Secretary of State?
I think there's been a huge change in the last 8 years. I mean, I remember in 2012, 40% of our electricity then was basically derived from coal, from burning coal. Today, that figure is less than 2%. So over the last 9 years, we've seen a revolution in the way that we power electricity, the way that we power our lives. And offshore wind has been a huge part of that success, has been a huge part of that transition.
OK, but the Prime Minister was wrong a number of years ago. Let's hope he's right this time.
I mean, I'm sure not everything you said 8 years ago was right.
Virtually nothing I've said is right. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position of power. My job is just to sit here and throw rotten fruit at government ministers.
Yeah, I get that. But as a politician, I mean, I look back on things I said 8-9 years ago.
I will not hear it. You're always on the ball. You are the Jack Grealish of the Cabinet in my book, Mr. Kwarteng.
Very, very kind of you.
If the Earth does warm by about 1.5 degrees centigrade up to 10 years earlier than expected, what does it mean in practical terms for people and indeed for government? What do governments...
I think you'll see...
Go ahead.
Sorry,
go
Nick.
ahead.
I think you'll see a lot more extreme weather outcomes. You'll see more wildfires. You'll see more erratic weather. And the problem with all of that is that you'll see people losing their lives, and you'll also see a lot of economic disruption. So the threat of climate change is real and considerable.
If we move to other matters while I have the benefit of you on the line, or an aspect of this, that there is a concern that if you're on a modest wage, various package of measures, improving electric cars and others, are going to hit you more hard than they are other people, possibly by around £400 a year. That's not a levelling up agenda, is it, Secretary of State?
No, it isn't, and I don't recognise the £400 a year. I mean, what we've consistently said is that we want to help the most vulnerable households and also people on lower incomes to be able to make the transition, and that's why we committed, large amounts of money in the manifesto in 2019, something like £9.2 billion over 10 years, to affect the measures that will help people make the transition. I think it's really important that we focus on decarbonisation. I think that climate change, most people accept that climate change is real, it's happening, and we need to do all we can to try and meet the challenge.
In other stories, are you the Cabinet Minister quoted on the front page of today's Daily Mail suggesting civil servants should have their pay cut if they work from home?
No, I'm not. I would never suggest that.
Do you support that?
I don't know who it was. No, I think people working from home are contributing hugely to the workforce.
Do you have a goal for your own department of how many of your colleagues you want to get back?
Yeah, I think most people. I do actually. I think most people. And the one thing we've got to remember, Nick, is we don't know when the COVID pandemic will end. If we don't know what the circumstances will be, but ideally, I'd like most workers, all workers in my department, to be coming in 2 or 3 days a week.
But by when? Now?
But as I said, I can't predict when the the COVID pandemic will pass. We've got to.
I mean, there is a
got to be done
sense that
safely.
the government departments, local authorities should be looking to roughly 3 days a week of staff in their respective offices by next month. So sort of allow the holiday period, if you will, and then come September, you look to
I
get
think
your
3 days a week is fair, and I'm just reluctant to say it has to be, by September the 1st or September the 15th. I think it needs to be done fairly soon, but we need to look at where we are with the pandemic before we can make that call.
You're an animal lover, Mr. Kwarteng.
I like animals. I like some animals. I don't like all of them.
Okay. I wonder where you stand on alpacas. Why must Geronimo die?
Because I think he was he was tested for TB, as I understand it. He was tested positive for it, and the policy, as outlined by the Environment Secretary, is that we have to cull, instances of bovine TB. Bovine TB is really serious,
Indeed,
by the way.
indeed.
It can affect
and of course, as business
farmers'
secretary, you would know
livelihoods.
absolutely.
And that's the rule. So, I've seen pictures of the animal, but I think we've got to just stick to the policy.
But there have been false tests as regards TB. My understanding is that we don't definitively know that Geronimo has TB. All the owner is asking for, Secretary of State, is one final definitive test for Geronimo's life. Why
So
can
my
that not be
understa-
afforded?
Nick, my understanding was that there had been tests. DEFRA had their tests. The animal Geronimo was found positive, and according to the policy, animals that are found positive have to be culled. That's the simple, the long and short of
A little
the
bit
case.
heartless, isn't it, Mr. Kwarteng? One
It's
final
tough.
test.
I mean, all of these
give
things
Geronimo
are
his
tough.
test.
Look, I'm not.
I mean, this is test. Get Dido Harding to drop round. She's all big on test and trace. Get her to drop by and give Geronimo the definitive test.
So if it is the case, all I'll say about this is if it is the case that the Geronimo is tested positive for TB, then I think the cull should happen.
Right. A couple of other matters, and I think we've talked about this before. Your colleague, the Health Secretary, is going to look at the competition, or ask the competition watchdog to look at the excessive pricing and exploitative practices among PCR COVID test firms. This will come, as you'll be aware, Secretary. Many people now, if they're going to have their summer holidays, if they're going to try and get away, they're looking to do it now. In some instances, it can cost £75, £100 per person, which a family of four, as you'll know, is a lot of money to add to the family holiday.
It's a huge amount of money, and he's quite right to look at pricing in this area. I've heard anecdotally that people are being charged up to £100 for individual tests, and I think that's completely wrong.
How do you? Surely you can take action, can't you?
You're
the
funnily
business
enough,
secretary.
I am the business
That's
secretary.
it. Just
but
keep
it's also
saying that
a
to
health-
yourself. I am the
There's
business secretary, and I'm going to take action.
And you're telling me, but there's also a health issue as well. So in this instance, he's taking the right decision to look into the pricing of it.
Okay. And lastly, were you in the room when your boss, the Prime Minister, went flipping tonto and threatened to demote Rishi Sunak?
I was not anywhere near the room when that was reported to have been said. I don't know what circumstances the Prime Minister said this, but all I know is that the Chancellor's doing a great job. He's got a lot of confidence with his colleagues. He's a very collegiate person to work with, and I enjoy working with him very closely.
You mentioned the Prime Minister. You didn't mention the Chancellor. Is he doing a glorious job as well?
I said no. Sorry, I don't know why what I said didn't come across clearly. I think the Chancellor's doing a very good job.
Oh, the Chancellor and the
think
Prime
the Prime
Minister. Are they in
Minister- I think
glorious
both of them.
harmony?
I think
Are they like
are.
Fortnum and Mason and Marks and Spencer's in
I
glorious
think
harmony?
they work pretty closely. Look, you and I have. Been
Are they the
following British
Fortnum and
politics.
Mason dream ticket?
Fortnum and Mason, if that's the comparison you want to draw, I think they're a good team. Look, I remember, as you do, prime ministers really having a bad time with
Indeed.
their chancellors, and I think this combination works very well.
Grateful for your time as ever. Thank you, Kwasi Kwarteng, appearing here on LBC Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy Secretary of State. 8 o'clock now. News, Simon Conway.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, a new UN report being published this morning will set out the stark reality of the climate crisis. It's the first